Three, two, one. Hi, welcome to Going Long with Cycling Weekly, the cycling podcast about all things ultra, bikepacking and adventure riding.
This is the place to come to hear interviews with the great and the good of the sport, and we chat about news and tech and try and get a few tips as well.
My name's Steve Shrubsall, I'm your host, and with me is my colleague, co-host and brother, James.
Hi, Steve. Now, I mentioned the great and the good of the sport. On occasion, we also turn the spotlight on the reprobates that are the hosts and friends of the hosts of Going Long. So that's exactly what we're doing today. And we're going to be chatting about doing the South Downs Way double with you, Steve, and our good friend, Dan Baines. Are we not?
We are indeed. Dan is our colleague at work as well. What's your position within the company, Dan? I always forget.
I'm a group art editor, so I'm in charge of kind of the visual side of print, but also a lot of the photography and lately more video and social stuff.
Yeah, and you're also a fairly handy cyclist to boot. How long have you been riding for, Dan?
Good question. 35, 36 years, probably.
That's quite a long time.
Longer than you care to remember. Now, you guys are both massive fans of the South Downs Way. It's like a ridge of hills that runs across the south of England. And, well, I mean, the clue's in the kind of the name, I suppose. It's very hilly. It's up and it's down. And it's 100 miles in length, right? And you guys are going to do the double in one go, so 200 miles. How much climbing is that?
And what do we think, Steve? About 7,500 meters?
Yeah, about that. So a single, obviously 100 miles, is about three. It sort of changes every time we do a single, doesn't it? Sometimes it comes out as about 3,500, sometimes about 4,000 meters. But yeah, we'll say between 7,500 and 8,000 meters of climbing. Yeah, over the 200 miles.
I mean, that is almost an Everest thing, then, isn't it? That's quite a long way to ride, or quite a lot of ascent in a single ride.
Yeah, it's a the climbing to riding ratio is solid. I don't know about you, Dan. I always say this. You know, we've got a bit of an affinity with the South Downs Way. Myself and Dan, we've ridden it many times. You know, it's sort of where we go to train and that. But I'd say it's got to be the hardest point-to-point 100 miles you can do in the UK.
Yeah. I've always found this quite interesting talking to you about that. You've got a lot more experience than myself riding in different places, certainly within the UK. And, you know, I've always sort of thought, you know, it's south of London, it's the southeast, it's you know, not known for being particularly rugged around here. But when you look at it on paper and when you're riding it, you do think, yeah, this is quite a tough gig. Certainly, there's a lot of times when you're looking at your Garmin and you've got like 17% gradient on there, and you think, oh yeah, you know, it may not be like a climb of like an hour long, but I think there's about 17 in total, isn't there? Like, worth mentioning, hills each way.
17 climbs. Is that in one go? One traverse. So not the double. That's the single. Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys have done the single South Downs Way end to end a few times now, haven't you? How many times have you done it?
I don't know, probably 4 or 5 times. I've ridden on there, you know, Steve said we train on there a bit anyway, so they kind of all sort of blur into one. But I've ridden the full route, as in 100 miles from Winchester to Eastbourne 3 times, I believe. And I've also found logistically it's easier to go to Amberley, which is sort of the halfway point, and then, you know, ride east towards Eastbourne and then ride back. And that's about 100 miles. And it's about the same amount of climbing as well. So, and it just means that you don't have to get to Winchester, spend the night there, then get to Eastbourne and then get yourself home. So, you know, you can just rock up in your car and, you know, you're about a mile away from the South Downs. So it just makes sense just to do that quite often.
Yeah.
I think the reason we do that as well, I don't know. There's just something about riding on the South Downs Way, which is, it's, as the Red Hot Chili Peppers have said before, and I think I've made this analogy before. It's pleasure.
Come on, drag it out again, kicking and screaming.
It's pleasure spiked with pain, but it's, I don't know. It's such a lovely place to ride, but it's such a brutal place to ride as well. But it really makes you feel like when you've done 100 miles on the SDW, as we'll call it, you know you've done 100 miles. You know, it's very, very hard work.
100 miles. I mean, there's 100 miles and there's 100 miles, and the South Downs Way is 100 miles.
It's very much 100 miles. Yeah.
I mean, the views are stunning, aren't they? On a good day, especially, and I guess they make the kind of the hardship of riding on such hard terrain kind of worth it.
Yeah, I think to me also the allure of it is, as somebody who lives sort of South London, it's like sort of proper gravel. It's not, you know, little sort of bridleways that are a mile long to connect to another bit that's a bit better than, you know, you're on the road. And, you know, literally there's what, sort of 3 or 4 miles of sort of public road on there. Other than that, you are off road. And also it is a great variety as well. Generally, it's kind of, you know, it's quite open and passable, but like you get the bit of single track in there, and you know you're riding under, you know, in the trees. You are riding along the chalk downs.
I think the last time we went, the last couple of times we've been along there, Dan, we sort of started likening it a bit to Strade Bianchi, because it's that white chalky stuff that sort of disappears over hills and back down dale. It's a stunning place to ride. I know we've established that, but I think it needs reiterating. That's why we keep going there. It's just stunning and really tough riding, and it just makes you incredibly fit. Just spending an hour there, it's just
there's no easy rides on the South Downs Way, right?
No.
So obviously you guys have done a lot of riding on it, but neither of you have ever done the double before, right? I mean, the double is it's a well-established kind of challenge to take on, isn't it? I guess lots of people have done it. I know people have even run it in one go, which is pretty bonkers. So was this just sort of the next step for you two?
Yeah, well, we tried it last year, actually, slightly ill prepared. It was about this time last year, actually, we tried it, and we sort of just rocked up to, it's near a place called Petersfield, which is about a third of the way in from the west. And we rode out to Eastbourne, which is about 70 odd miles ago, 75 miles. Starting to get dark by that time. We were already, I don't know about you, Dan, but by the time we got to Eastbourne, I was already fairly well cooked.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. You know, we were probably a couple of hours behind on schedule. It's like the South Downs, it's amazing. You can be riding for a long time and you look down on your computer and you think, oh, I've only sort of gone 10 miles or whatever. And
time slows down.
It's, you know, you sort of think 100 miles, it's a massive achievement, but we've done that. And so it's like, well, 200, it must just be a little bit harder. Well, it's not really, is it? It's quite a lot harder.
Yeah, I mean,
but we sort of take that attitude into it, Steve, don't we? We were a bit like blasé with it, and I know.
Yeah. I mean, when you said you just rocked up at Petersfield, that suggests like maybe slightly under preparation. I don't know. Maybe I'm doing you wrong there. But.
Well, I think we had the mile. There's a difference between, I think, riding 100 miles and riding 200 miles. Of course there is. One's 100 miles longer than the other one, but the difference is that physical fitness becomes almost a secondary to preparation. So physical fitness very much required for both of them, obviously. But I think if you're fit enough to ride the first 100 miles, you could probably do the second. You just need to be prepared for it.
Preparation and I guess feeding as well.
Exactly. Feeding all part of the preparation. You need to not necessarily carb load, or that would help, but I think it's sort of the reason, like going back to our last attempt, the reason we failed at about 120 miles is because at about 2 o'clock in the morning on the way back from Eastbourne, so near Lewes, my lights just gave up, didn't they, Dan?
Yeah, yes, it was not ideal, was it? Because we still had about 2.5 hours before you started to see any sort of light in the sky. And I remember saying to you, we were just south of the A27, and you were behind me at the time, and I could, you had a really powerful light, and it kept turning off, and I was like, okay, there's something wrong with it. Like, will we get through the night on it? And it went on and off for a bit, and then it just went off, didn't it? And I remember saying to you, I'll just try and ride sort of within my light beam and follow me. And I slowed up, but it's quite a techie bit, and I just heard you crash, and then I was like, right, you're okay. And then we're like, yeah, you're fine. So
it wasn't happening.
And then I just heard you crash again, and then it's like, right, well, we can't really sort of ride off road in sort of pitch black.
Yeah, that's probably trying to tell you something, I guess.
And like,
carry on, Dan.
Yeah, you sort of said that you were a little bit underprepared. I was maybe over prepared. I had a couple of lights, but I was not confident that they were going to go through the night. They're quite old. And I gave you one at one point. I think it died, didn't it? And then we ended up just on the in the Esso petrol station on the A27, trying to sort out what we're going to do next, which turned out to be a low point, but also a very funny high point.
It was funny. To anyone listening, if your light goes, following somebody with a light, it doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. I tried to. So Dan was maybe, a wheel length ahead of me, but bear in mind, this is quite techie signal track. So all I can see is what he's looking at. I can't see anything directly in front of me. Hence, I went down a couple of times, and things got rather sweary. And we sought solace at a Esso garage. Fortunately, that's 24 hours, quite near Lewes.
Did you by any chance walk into the Esso garage and say, I want the most calorific thing you've got, please? You're wanted.
I would have loved to have walked in that Esso garage, but it was one of the night hatch, so you couldn't actually go in. And the reason I would have loved to have gone in that Esso garage is because when you slow down to sort of 5 miles an hour or even walking pace, which me and Dan were doing at the time, because my lights had gone, you get very, very cold. So I was freezing, and you weren't much better either, but you were a bit more layered up than me, I think, Dan, weren't you? Yeah. But so we asked the guy in the Esso station, I just said, listen, have you got any kind of like, I don't know, if you got a torch basically that I could like potentially tie onto the top of my helmet that would help me sort of negotiate the rest of the night. He didn't have any of that. Then it started. It was a question of, right, we've got to sleep, or we've got to sort of sit down until it gets light again. But in order to do that, we're going to need warmth. So we ended up buying a disposable barbecue and a one of those sort of self-lighting logs. Got back on the trail, lit it, and basically spent the next 2 hours huddled around it.
Did you get any warmth at all from it?
It was all right. Yeah, it was quite a comfortable night, sort of.
I'm not sure about that. Again, it kind of comes out. This is, I think where we differ, Steve, sometimes is you're very good at kind of just doing things without sort of putting too much thought into it. You don't let sort of, you don't deliberate too much, whereas I will sort of overthink things and prepare. I did actually have a space blanket. I did actually have a bivvy bag, and I also had an inflatable mattress, which, served me very well. But, seeing you sort of sat on that log, sort of shivering away in front of this fire, which really wasn't kicking out that much heat.
It was better than nothing, though. Yeah.
I did take pity on you and throw you the space blanket, but it meant then that I just heard rustling for quite a lot of the time that we were sat there. But I did manage to get a couple of hours sleep, which was kind of welcome, really. I don't know how much further I could have gone through the night without sort of that break.
Yeah.
So you called it after a couple of hours. I guess by that point the sun was probably starting to come up anyway, but it's like you guys are done with it, kind of live to fight another day sort of thing.
Yeah, I think so. I was a little bit disappointed. I almost missed the sunset because we were still in the woods and I was trying to wake up, I didn't get the greatest amount of sleep, and after all the sugar sort of that I'd consumed, I was a bit bleary-eyed.
So aside from making sure you've got working lights and possibly packing a barbecue as well, I don't know, what are the sort of lessons that you guys learned from that trip that you're going to take into this upcoming one?
Well, actually, we were, after we Dan woke up. I didn't wake up because I didn't actually go to sleep. Dan heard the rustling, me rustling. That was because it was quite hard to get comfortable on a sort of in a space blanket on a load of leaf litter. So there was like all sorts of rustling going on. I just could not get comfortable. So I didn't sleep at all. But when Dan woke up, we set off about 4 o'clock in the morning again, after sort of laying down and sort of thinking, what on earth are we doing, for a couple of hours. Then about an hour or two into the morning, about 6 a.m, it chucked it down, didn't it, Dan? So
yeah,
we got to a hostel, sort of at the halfway point, I guess, of the whole thing, near Brighton, sort of parallel to Brighton, and just sort of went in there, and the rain kept beating down, and we sort of looked at each other and thought, not today. So that was the end of that little adventure. 120 odd miles in the bag with God knows how much climbing. It was a hard day. It was tough, but we've obviously got unfinished business, and this is happening. Well, when this goes out, it will be happening tomorrow. So Tuesday evening we're starting.
Yeah, I think for me, I kept the clock running throughout the whole duration, and I stopped it on about 23 hours, and I think only about 11 of that was actually riding. So it's not actually like a bad moving pace, but we were in the woods trying to sort of sleep, but we spent a lot of time sort of in the forecourt of the petrol station.
And you had
I
tubeless issues very early doors, about 5 miles in. I think we had to stop for about hour and a half, 2 hours in total, just sorting Dan's tires out. So it wasn't all my fault.
No.
So as to the question at hand, what lessons have you learned from that you're going to be taking into the next, your upcoming one, which at this point will be starting tomorrow night?
For me, I'll be taking a lot of food with me. I'll be taking a lot of water with me. I won't be relying so much on sort of external places to, buy food and water, although there's very few on the route. Having said that, actually, there's more cafes and whatnot popped up on the route over the last couple of years. But I think, we want to keep, because our target, it's a pretty lofty one. We want to do it in sub 24 hours in order to get on the South Downs Double website. And to get on the South Downs,
there's like an official list of sub 24-hour people, is there? There is,
yeah.
That's quite cool. I mean, that does sound like a hard task. I'm guessing, I don't think from what you've told me in the past, Steve, that you've finished the single in less than 10 hours before.
I haven't, no. But there has been a lot of faff. There's been a lot of sort of fueling on the go, but this time it's going to be a case of I'm going to be taking a huge amount of fuel with me, probably about 10 to 15,000 calories, if you can fathom that.
That sounds like a big bag full of food.
Yeah, and it's amazing what you can get in one of those squeezy bottles of chocolate sauce. neck one of them, and you're good to go for a 10 hours. It's about 1,000
You need to run that one past Jill Mooney.
Well, yeah, we'll be doing. Yeah, I don't know. What are you going to be taking in terms of nutrition, Dan? I've said that I'm going to be taking a lot. Has your strategy in terms of nutrition changed at all?
Not particularly. I'm going to take some sugary stuff with me. It's very easy, obviously, to sort of gets into your system quickly, but there's only so many hours that I can sort of put up with that. So I think that'll be a sort of top up for me. I'm looking at kind of, rolls and croissants and that kind of stuff. And, if we can eliminate kind of stopping as much as possible, I think that's best. But yeah, like when you're doing it, you just want to eat, really, don't you? You shouldn't really be thinking about, nutritious kind of side of it, other than sort of getting the calories in. It's not, although the hills are steep, we're going to take it easy going up them. They're not sort of red line efforts. They are, a little bit more than zone 2, but keep it kind of, sort of ticking over quite nicely, and, stick to sort of real food. I think the good thing is that there's water taps sort of every 15 miles. So, you can always find water. You don't have to carry too much of that. And of course, you can always put stuff into water to sort of dissolve and, get your quick energy that way.
Glucose tabs or whatever, something like that.
Yeah, and electrolytes and that.
Thing is, I mean, Dan says, and he rightly says, he goes up the hills in zone 2, and some of them are very steep. I'm about 15 kilos heavier than Dan. So his zone 2 is sort of my zone 4. When I'm going up hills, I've got to really push out a lot more power. So I need to really keep on top of the fueling, probably more than Dan. I need to eat more than Dan, because I'm putting out more power. I don't want to be putting out more power, but because he's lighter, he can spin. If you find your lowest gear and you spin up, even if in my lowest gear, I'm still grinding at points, just about barely able to turn the pedals over. I think if it gets to that stage, it'll be walking. But I think the key is here, just minimal stopping, absolutely minimal stopping, if wherever possible,
I mean, that is, it's a point, the kind of food issue is a point really well worth making, because, that's how it works, isn't it? If you're kind of in zone 2 pedaling for an hour, you are going to burn fewer calories than if you're kind of spiking into zone 4. So you're going to need more food if you're kind of going up into zone 4 or 5, and plus you're going to obviously fatigue your muscles quicker as well. So I guess you'd have to pay attention to that, and you don't necessarily, both of you need to eat exactly the same amount, but I guess you're going to be both eating on a really regular basis.
It's key, isn't it? Like, anybody that knows anything about cycling says you eat when you eat every 20 minutes, regardless of whether you feel hungry or not. You've just got to get it in there. You've got to start eating straight away and just sort of maintain that, really.
And that's going to be the hard part. All the ultras I've done 3, I think, this year. I've had not gut distress per se. I haven't thrown up or anything, but I felt pretty nauseous. Personally, I found that you've got the adrenaline rush of doing it, and that'll take sort of 6 or 7 hours before that's out of my system. And of course, it's very easy just to get carried away. You don't particularly sort of feel hungry. You don't sort of feel like you need to drink. But 7 hours is a lot of exercise, and you don't want to get to that and all of a sudden sort of think, what I should have been eating sort of 4 or 5 hours ago. So it doesn't always go down well, does it? But no, that's where I think we'll probably factor in one big feed somewhere, won't we, Dan? Like either in one of the cafes the second day, because we're starting in the evening. We're starting around 7 in the evening in Amberley, so we're going to go out east. to Eastbourne, then come back on ourselves all the way back west to Winchester. I mean, this is all in theory. Then back to it sounds very easy when you say it, but
okay, so you're essentially starting halfway along, pretty much. You're
Yeah.
going to one end, and you come in all the way back past the halfway point to the other end, and coming back again. So
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. I mean, in
So-
terms of your condition, like your physical condition, compared to last year, both of you, are you have you done anything specific in training to kind of get set for this, or you just kind of do what you normally do and hope that a kind of, I guess a more careful approach, if I could put it that way, is going to, see you through to the win?
Yeah, I think for me, I've been more consistent, but I think my longest ride has probably only been 7 hours, 6 or 7 hours. We were up on the South Downs, sort of 4 or 5 weeks ago. But I'm not kind of that concerned about sort of hours in the saddle as such. I've got the background in cycling, and as Steve says, it's just a case of you keep putting the food in, you're riding in zone 2. I'm not too worried about that. For me, it's more little niggles. I have in the past sort of suffered, like, got quite a sore knee, my left knee, and I think that's a couple of issues. I think I've probably got a sort of weakness in my hip, which gives me sort of knee cave. But also the fact that you're unclipping. There are a lot of gates on the South Downs, so I'm constantly unclipping that left foot to open a gate and then get back in. So I've been doing some exercises to try and strengthen that. It's a little bit sort of Heath Robinson, but we'll see how we get on the day. So I think it'll be something like that sort of ruins it for me if it's going.
I'll do my very best to get to the gates before you, Dan. It's always the way. Poor old Dan. He's like the gate bear. He'll
You've got to slow down, Dan.
Yeah.
I mean, is there anything you're going to be doing on the day, Dan, to kind of, apart from trying to get to the gate second, to kind of help your knee out? I don't know, using paracetamol, ibuprofen, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I've done all that. Like, I know last year I was using ibuprofen and cocodamol, and it just wasn't even touching it. It was just,
Right.
It's like, it's not happening.
That was nasty.
Yeah, but then a few days later it's fine. So literally, it's just kind of sort of overuse, something like that. But
you used a mountain bike, because we're switching roles in terms of bikes this year. You used a mountain bike last year. You're using a gravel bike this year. Do you think that will make any difference at all?
I think so. Yeah, I've ridden the South Downs on a cyclocross bike with 33C tyres. That was the first experience of it, and I did okay. I've also ridden it on, as you say, on a mountain bike on a hardtail, it was an old XC bike, so it's pretty light, but it's got 100mm suspension on the front. And I've also done it on a gravel bike with suspension, and I do think the gravel bike with suspension is the sort of secret to it for me. Just the different sort of hand positions you get with drop bars is a big thing. 100 miles just holding a sort of fixed position on a mountain bike. I have had sort of neck pain with that, which I probably would on most bikes, but it seemed a bit more pronounced on the mountain bike. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it goes, because I have sort of built this bike up with sort of comfort in mind. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what bike you've got. There's no perfect bike for the South Downs. There's no perfect tyres. One bike you'll have an advantage in one area but not in another. So it's kind of, I think it all sort of equals out after a while.
Yeah, I think that whole thing about sort of there's no perfect bike, that's something that you can really take away from. I mean, and it applies to any ride really, and it goes to show that it's very easy to kind of overthink what bike you're going to use. I mean, you've done the South Downs Way on a 33mm tired cyclocross bike, which you probably wouldn't even kind of consider now, because it seems crazy in retrospect, but you did it at the time and it was okay.
Yeah.
You just need to get on and do it.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah, it's
kind.
just naivety, really. Just, but you know, this was sort of before you got the fat tyre and gravel
Yeah.
bikes. Really, it was just what was available. So, and you know, it was lightweight. It went up hills quicker than my gravel bike. So,
Yeah.
Mm.
So Steve, you're going to use your Canyon Exceed mountain bike, am I right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I know we've spoken about, gravel versus mountain bikes on a number of occasions, but for me, my lack of, I mean, when we were out training, for example, a month or so ago on the Downs, with Dan and a couple of other colleagues, I was following Dan down a pretty sketchy descent, sort of, I can't remember, near Brighton or something, and Dan was just disappeared like in front of me on a gravel bike, and I was barely keeping up with him on my mountain bike, and there's no way I'd be anywhere near him if I was on a gravel bike on that, with that sort of on that position, where I've got a more confident position on a mountain bike. I think that will hopefully even things out. Obviously, I'm hoping that, because I've got some good fitness at the moment, I'll be able to sort of keep up with Dan. Well, we're both going to be going pretty easy. I'm hoping it'll I'll be able to keep up with Dan on the ascents and then sort of match him on the descent. So yeah, I'm not holding him up basically.
There's a lot more opportunity for a little bit of recovery if you feel comfortable on the bike on this descent.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, I rode on the South Downs Way a month or 6 weeks ago, and the descent seemed almost as hard as the uphills, just because I was on a gravel bike and I was kind of on the edge of what I was capable of on the downhills as well. It was just constant,
there's no
challenge really.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no recovery. So I'm thinking, this will be a time to sort of, get my heart rate back down to a nice sort of, not that, I want it to really go above 145 beats for the entire thing, really. Although, it's quite a tall order when you've got a sort of 15% gradient in front of you, which there are quite a lot of. But yeah, I'm hoping, because last year I did it on a gravel bike and Dan did it on a mountain. We'll just see how it goes. It's trial and error, but
yeah,
I'm confident. The sub 24 hours is a big target, but I think it's achievable. If that doesn't happen, just finishing it would be amazing as well. So
yeah, it's a massive achievement.
Yeah. But yeah, I think we've got to go out with that, that mindset where, we're striving for a particular target. Don't go out, we know what average speed we need, it's 10 miles an hour, basically. So yeah, that in theory.
I think another good point about a mountain bike for you, Steve, is the tires. And again, you can become very obsessed with the right tires, and I don't think there are the right tires on the South Downs, but from my experience, I think it's better to have something a little bit stronger than lighter. I've split the sidewall many times on the South Downs, and you just end up slowing yourself down. And 2 or 3 times I've ended up just putting a tube in a tubeless tire, and you can't reseat a tire when it's totally flat with a little CO2 canister, in my experience. So yeah, a little bit more weight in the tires is always good.
I'll be bringing a bottle of sealant, God knows how many plugs. I mean, they feature heavily in the kit list, basically.
And what are you going to be putting your kit in? What sort of bags are you both taking? Packing fairly light, I guess. I mean, plenty of kit, but you're not kind of taking excessive bags.
No, not at all. For me, I think I've got a tail fin sort of pannier thing on the back. I can't remember how many litres you can get in there. I think it's 8 litres perhaps. And
that's the tail fin rack, is it?
Yeah.
The sort of proprietary bag.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
That and a little sort of tool roll kind of bar bag, just to have batteries in and charge, be able to charge things. Computers and lights is probably what I'm going to try and aim for. Like, it would be totally different if the weather was going to be bad, but it's going to be July. It's forecasting 26 degrees, which
Going to be warm.
is warm, but we've done it on warmer days. But hopefully it means like the nights, the evenings and the nights will be a little bit more pleasant as well. Maybe throw in some sort of arm warmers and leg warmers just in case we've got to stop.
Yeah,
but,
I'm guessing there's no plans to sleep or anything like that. It's like,
well, I'll
you
take
do it in 24 hours. You're going all the way through, aren't you?
if you're doing that, yeah, you sort of, it's straight out the window, isn't it? Like the 24-hour thing. But I would rather achieve doing the 200 than, sort of think, well, I'm not going to do it in 24 hours, so I just sort of can it. So I will be taking a bivvy bag because they're not very big. But that said, I sort of think, well, if we're starting off in the evening, just get through the first night. It might just be a case of just having a 20 minutes, an hour and a half somewhere at, I don't know, 7 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock. I don't know which, it's obviously
I know a very
in the day.
There's a pig farm with our names written all over it. Looks pretty comfortable.
Those little sties,
yeah,
one each.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll be
You
taking.
might have something to say about it.
I've got like Dan. I've got a sort of a bag that fits onto the front of my bars, which I'm going to take most of my clothing in. So, like Dan says, arm warmers and leg warmers. I won't make a mistake again. Last year, I just packed incredibly light and suffered for that because it did get very, very cold. Even in July, the temperature dipped right down because you are up high as well. Yeah. Well, relatively high, for
does make a small difference, doesn't it?
Yeah. And then
sorry, carry on.
And then so I'll have my food and clothing in that bag in the front there. I'll have a bar bag as well, which I'll put tools and spares and electronics and stuff in, and a backpack which I'll put food in as well. So yeah, not going particularly heavy, but at the same time not going particularly light either. It's 24 hours is a long time to sort of live on a bike, so
yeah. So you're setting off in the evening, Tuesday evening, that's tomorrow. What sort of time are you leaving?
Well, I've got to get up there after work, so I know you say 7 o'clock, Steve, but I think it's going to be dusk, more likely sort of 9 o'clock.
Yeah. That's fine by me.
I guess the strategy is pretty broadly similar, isn't it? You set off late, it kind of gives you the whole day the next day, and you get the night out of the way quickly while you're still fresh. It's always good.
I think so, because you get that adrenaline of riding through the night. It's lovely riding through the night as well, especially on fresh legs. As I found out when I rode the Great British Escapade, which starts at 5 p.m. So it's a perfect introduction to night riding. You've only got sort of 3 hours, 4 hours, and you're into the night. So but when me and Dan start, it will be sort of closing in on dusk already. We'll get that out of the way. So probably end up riding for 7 hours, top 6 hours in the dark, maybe. Yeah. And then you get the bonus of hopefully a really nice sunrise. Then you get a motivation from that to keep going. So, and then hopefully, by sort of dusk the following day, we'll be back at the cars and enjoying
medals and high fives.
yeah.
But I wish you all the luck, as I'm sure do all our listeners. And just for listeners' benefit, will you be posting up on the Going Long Instagram account, which is worth mentioning, is going_long_adventure. While you're doing that,
we'll probably add some stories. Give that a follow, going_long_adventure, and check out our YouTube channel as well, going_long_adventure. going _ adventure. So
It's easier to write than to say.
yeah, so yeah, we'll put some videos up on there. And I'm also check the show notes because I'm going to put a live tracker so you can see how we're progressing. Yeah,
that's
so
a cool idea. Yeah.
yeah,
Great.
so yeah, check our progress, whether or not we're going to make the 24-hour, whether or not we're going to make 48 hours. But by hook or by crook, we're going to finish it this time, Daniel, are we not?
We are. Yeah, it's become mythical for me now. You know,
Yeah,
8 or 9 years of sort of experience on there. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
it needs to be done, and it's sort
Definitely
of,
an iconic route, isn't it? So it'd be great to have said you've done that.
it needs to be done. The double we've been talking about for many years, and yeah, then we can just say, right, done that, and then get on with planning the triple.
And when you finished it, guys, are you going to come back and tell us how it all went on Going Long?
really
Damn
not.
right we are. Yeah. That's yeah. We'll be I'll make a video as we go as well, so you can see, you know, warts and all the pain we go through, because it will be unpleasant. But you know, like I say, pleasure spiked with pain. You're suffering, or you know, physically exerting yourself in a beautiful place, and I don't think there's any more of a privilege in life than to do that, personally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a long pedal at the end of the day, isn't it? Like,
Exactly.
we all like riding bikes, so just it's
Exactly.
set aside. It's 24 hours just to
Yeah.
ride a bike.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Sounds pretty good in my book. Well, very best of luck, guys, and we will catch up with you. Don't forget to check out the Instagram account going_long_adventure to catch up with your adventures, and we'll chat to you anon.
Cheers, James.
Cheers.
Cheers.
See you on the start line, Dan.
Will do.